welcome to the Middle-earth Play-by-Mail fan channel, where today we're doing another one of our region guides. Now, we've already done region guides looking at Mordor and looking at Harrendor and Umbar and the far Southlands, so to kind of fill in that extra piece in that geographical jigsaw, I thought I'd do one today focusing on the lands of Gondor. Gondor, as we should all know, means land of stone. And I kind of feel there are 4-5 main regions I want to talk about. First of all, areas which are well known to anyone who's read the books or seen the films. We have the area around the great river Anduin flowing through here, and Ithilien, which is this narrow area down here. Second area to talk about are the lands set a little bit further back, mostly hills on the coast, which belong to South Gondor. And then we have a region across to the west of that, which is really areas below the White Mountains, but not particularly populated. And this is known as Enedwaith. Enedwaith meaning middle folk. Waith, as you know, middle folk, meaning folk, as in Haradwaith. Ened, as in Endor, meaning middle. So, yeah, this area belonged to the middle folk. Make of that what you will. Then you've got this stretch of White Mountains, which kind of defines a boundary of the people of Gondor in some ways. But also I'm going to talk a little bit about this region just to the north with the Gap of Rohan there, leading up towards some of the forest areas of Fangorn and so forth, which do start off in Gondorian hands. I'm not going to go all the way up to Gondorian holdings here along the Great Road up here, because I'll cover that in another region guide when I look at the Rovanian. Okay, so back down to the middle. Let's have a look. One of the main areas and a very strategically critical area in Middle-earth Play-by-Mail is up here, up and down here, the Ithilien region, either side of the great river Anduin. Now, this is of crucial importance, partly because it's heavily populated. You've got a city at Pelargir, you've got a city here of Minas Tirith, 2 major towns, you've got 3 more towns around here. That's just for North Gondor. Then you've got towns, major towns, a lot of capitals of the Dark Servants also on the doorstep of this region. And in terms of getting into Mordor, if that's what you want to do, provided you're not wanting to come in from the east through the back of Mordor and slog your way through there, you're going to be fighting through the Ithil Pass and getting up from the Ithil Woods up into Durthang, or going around here up into the Morannon. So there's a huge amount of fighting that happens. It's hugely contested. There's been all sorts of thoughts about the strategy of how that works out, the best plans for Gondor, for Fire King, for Dark Lieutenants and so forth to pursue in that, so I won't go that into here. To note, there are roads running down both sides, which means that movement can be pretty quick around here, and also from 3028 this goes down. There's the Great South Road here, which can very quickly, particularly if you've got some well-fed cavalry, get you down amongst the Corsairs and Quiet Avenger lands, or even looping round south to have a pop at the Cloud Lord. But that's straying into other territories. Let's have a look around Ithilien here. So, a lot of towns, a lot of cities, well fortified. The major river does divide the area in two. And so there are bridges here between 2927 and 2928, not showing up on this map at the moment. I'm not sure why, it should do. And also a bridge between 2924 and 3024, between Minas Tirith and Osgiliath. There is often a lot of discussion amongst teams of both sides as to whether to blow these bridges up or not. Obviously, once the bridges are blown up, you can't move armies across. So if both bridges get blown, it kind of separates off the east bank of the Anduin from the west. But all this recruiting capacity, 1,300 per turn, which you can get from Pelargir, Minas Tirith, and whatever this place is called, Minas Arthur, has to find another way across, usually by boats. But of course, if Minas Tirith Gondors blow up the bridges this side, it means that the enemy nations from the Dark Servants cannot get across. And for them it's even harder because they don't even start with boats that they can use to get across. So that kind of stops at that point. But normally Dark Servants don't mind too much if they can't get armies across to 2924 or 2927 because they're not easy to take. Normally if they would move on to either of these, it's because they want to push on and get through into the much softer areas of South Gondor and cause a bit of a mischief there. Now, moving across to South Gondor, I suppose the only other thing to mention with Ithil, it's only 2 hexes wide, so it is a natural pinch point between the mountains. So there's a lot of fighting that will happen up and down here, and depending on which side Harad's on and whether they're coming in to threaten as well, it makes it a really fun and interesting theatre to think through. There's not too much scope for thinking through really expansive movement. It's not like the Ravanian or Angmar. If you've got an army here at 3024, your options are quite limited because of the mountains and the river. So often it can just be a bit of a grind between 2 big loads of armies recruiting and bashing against each other. One thing to note, however, if you have a very good commander at 3024 or 3124 with well-fed cavalry, you can try an evasive movement to try and get beyond the opponents. So let's say you're at 3124 and you've got some cavalry. If I just do the fed cavalry army range, you can see you can get from there to Barad-ungol, that's 3 points, but of course you'd stop at Barad-ungol because there's a whacking great castle there. But let's imagine that you're moving evasively, so it's double, so that takes you 6 points, and then 1 more point takes you there, so double that, so that's 8 points, and then 3 more to get up into the mountains. You can jump like a knight in chess from minus Ithil to Barad-dur with heavy cavalry that's fed on a forced march, evasive movement. Now, you will have to, I'll just clear those numbers, you will have to make a check every time there is a hex which has an obstacle in it. It's possible you could get past Barad-ungol and then find they've built a tower or have an army at 3324, fail your check and get stranded there. But it is one way to try and sneak past some of the obstacles. And given the huge economic advantages that North Gondor has, you are one of the best placed nations for getting well-fed heavy cavalry put together without too much expense. Right, enough of that and those shenanigans. Okay, South Gondor. Couple of things to note. First of all, you are nicely protected to the north by the White Mountains. Now, you probably don't need this protection because to the north there are usually friends. The Duns are sometimes pre-aligned, and usually they're pre-aligned as good. Sometimes they're there as neutral, so you might have to talk to them because they do have a little place and starting army there for you to have to look out for. Now, what was I going to say? Yeah, so you do have areas around here. Now, in the 1650 game, I will go and have a look at the 2950 map in a moment. You start with a pretty solid city with a fort and a port in Dol Amroth, very good for recruitment. And you also start with quite a lot of other towns and major towns, which means there's good tax base and also the relatively sheltered, warmer climate, and having a lot of hill stroke rough, having some mountains available that aren't too troubled by dragons. It is possible for South Gondor and North Gondor as well to end up placing a lot of camps around here and really helping to supercharge their economy. The one thing that South Gondor has to think about as well is that they are probably the most coastal nation of the Free Peoples. They start with a pretty good navy, but they also start with a bunch of scurvy pirates to the south, and the Corsairs know it. So if the Corsairs decide they're going to start invading over here, they can cause all sorts of problems if they land and start fanning out. So that's something that South Gondor really has to think about. If you're wanting to get troops through to support the battles in Ithilien, support your neighbour of North Gondor, it's going to be going in by sea, usually up the River Anduin and parking up there. Otherwise, you can march along the roads pretty quickly, again, especially if you've got cavalry. But if bridges get blown, it's a long way round. So if the bridge gets blown at Osgiliath and down here at Pelargir, and you've got some cavalry here, you've got to go along the roads, up, say hello to the people in Minas Tirith, then up here, probably cutting across country or maybe around the roads here, all the way around the top of the River Anduin, round the marshes. As you can see, it's a long way. So bridges getting blown are an issue for you if you're wanting to help in Ithilien, but you start with a lot of transport so you can get troops across. Just watch out for those scurvy pirates. Now moving across to Enedwaith. Enedwaith is an interesting part of the world because it is mostly hidden. You can see I've got some cross-hatched bits here, and it's quite common for both dark servants and free peoples to come and just pop down a camp or two around here, particularly around these mountains which are quite inaccessible. It's sometimes a way to try and build a force behind enemy lines. If you're the dark servants, come and park a camp over here, build it up, maybe you can attack from behind. But you know, as a strategy, I find you've got to really solidly have really good emissaries and really solidly commit right from the start to building something up if that plan's going to work. Now, now the map here is showing that this area along here isn't on the is available on the Free People's maps. That probably is with the Dunlendings, but if the Dunlendings aren't involved, if they're neutral, 2025, that row along there is also dark. It is possible for one of the nations around here, Quiet Avenger, Corsairs, even Harad if they like, to come very early and just drop some troops off here. Nobody really knows they're there, and move them in and cause some trouble. Now, it's not all the sturdy knights of South Gondor in this territory. There is also the port of Ethelond here, belonging to the Cinder. I see this as a really important strategic place, purely because the Cinder can build ships for 1/3 of the timber cost. The biggest problem for building ships is getting hold of the timber. The gold at 1,000 per ship usually isn't as much of a problem. So if you can get the Cinder with their port there to effectively churn out ships and give them to other nations around here, that really helps in the sea wars, particularly if the Corsairs have gone dark servants and you're having to battle against them. The Corsairs also have an advantage, but they only build their ships at half the timber cost of 750, plus the fact that it's easier for the Free Peoples to get hold of timber than it is for the dark servants. If we just go across, let's have a look where most of the dark servants are. Oh yes, the blasted mountains and deserts of Mordor. Not many trees there. Whereas if you have a look at the Free Peoples, you've got people like the Sindar Elves and the Woodmen. The clue is in the name, and you can see that they can get quite a lot of timber going, particularly as well if you go out over this area, up around the Blue Mountains and where you've got some dwarves and some Noldos starting off. Again, you can get Free Peoples planting a few camps around there, maybe Cardaland joining in. And as a team, if you work together, you can make Ethelond here under the Cinder a real production line for high quality warships and transports for taking on the pirates to the south. So I mentioned Enedwaith. They have, it's a fairly empty sort of region. It can be quite good if you're dark servants to park something on the mountains here, particularly if, you can then kind of recruit troops there and send them out both ways. But I generally feel that if you're wanting to have a behind-the-scenes, off-map ambush population centre, you really have to commit to it early, get emissaries in there and really try and boost it if it's going to work and your first force turns up with enough clout and surprise to take down a good chunk of the enemy. Right, we've then got the White Mountains running all the way from the sea, all the way along here, past the Gap of Rohan, A little bit thicker here, meaning it's even harder for troops to get through, and along this area here. Now, because there are very few dark servants actually to the north here, this is usually, even though it's only one single block of mountains, more than enough to stop them getting armies in. If they reach a point where maybe Angmars run riot far to the north, or the Duns have gone evil, whatever it may be, apart from this little Dun settlement round here, by the time they've dealt with the more pressing concerns of Cardalan, Arthedain, maybe Rudauer, whichever way they've gone, you're at a point in the game where the Dark Servants don't need to kill you off with armies. They will have more than enough fun killing you off with their agents. So that offers a fairly well sheltered area. So the main threats are going to come through from the sea, or Mordor itself over here. So the White Mountains are good, and they're not as heavily infested with dragons. I'm not sure if there are many dragons at all actually in the White Mountains. Certainly compared to the Withered Heath and the Misty Mountains, it's very low on the old dragons. So if you're wanting to bump up your bronze, steel and gold production, and a little mithril on the side, always nice to have a bit of mithril, White Mountains can be pretty good for that. In fact, you've got a couple of forests dotted around here. You've got a good range of things that you can pick up on for getting a good mixed economy going. I did mention something about the Gap of Rohan. Oh, you've got a couple of places along here, such as the ruins here at Dun Harrow, where you can get some interesting encounters. So if you're playing in a game and you're near these parts of the world, do look those up. The Gap of Rohan is... it's another one of those critical pinch points. If you can park a population centre down here and fortify it, it just slows down any east-west movement. I mean, it's not one of the biggest pinch points, because unless Doglord makes a break early in the game, or Dark Servants claim a good couple of neutrals and they want to swarm through here to stab North Gondor in the back, there aren't too many Dark Servant starting positions round here to pressure that. But even so, put in a camp, put on a tower, that'll slow them down. Do it at 2020 as well, it'll slow them down twice, unless they're using sneaky evasive movement orders. And then, this area around here, it's a little bit more open than some, but you've still got the extra movement that it takes getting across these small rivers, and with the fords there, these tributaries of the Anduin, and you have got a bit of a road running through it. It's a very interesting area, this area kind of north of the White Mountains but south of Mirkwood, because anything coming out of northwest Gondor can easily get into here. You've got Dragonlord, who's got this as part of his area to think about. Normally a lot of people are wanting to put camps down in the woods here. Mountains are interesting. You can get one or two encounters, such as Amon Hen at 2620. There's an interesting area around here, and you've also got swamps around here. I generally avoid going in swamps if I can, in any way, shape or form. So I can't tell you too much about them. Might be some encounters going on there, but they kind of add an extra kind of soft barrier between any troops travelling through there, particularly when you've got the road swinging round. Right, okay, well, we've had a look at the layout in 1650. We'll just have a quick run through on how it starts with 2950. And as you can see, it's a lot thinner in terms of the population centres there. That's generally how it works in 2950, much smaller economies. Although we still have a city at Minas Tirith, Tower of the Guard as it's now known. And down the Ithilian area, the threat from Mordor is a little bit closer, with Minas Ithil having fallen and been renamed Minas Morgul. We've got a couple of hidden camps, one North Gondor, one Ice King in this bit of forest here, and also Harad is much more thinned out as a threat to the south. Looking across to South Gondor, again fewer population centres, although they still do have a city there, which is great. The Ethelond is a little bit reduced, and it's hidden, which is good as a protection from marauding pirates, but it has slightly less fortifications. I believe it was on a fort before, but also being a town, it can only hold a harbour. So the plot to get shipbuilding going under the Cinder, who can build ships at 1/3 of the cost, will require you to get Ethelond from a town up to a major town, and then the harbour up to a port, which is a bit more of an investment. Enedwaith, still nice and empty. We've still got the Duns, who've got a major town there now. And the Gap of Rohan now is potentially contested with the addition of a neutral in the shape of the White Wizard. Angranost, Isengard, major town with a citadel. So that makes the Gap of Rohan a little bit more interesting and contested than in other variants. Down here, a lot of the North Gondor starting population centres aren't there anymore. But we do have this nation in red, which, let's click on their capital, Edoras. That is the Riders of Rohan. And you can see the that the Riders of Rohan there, in the lore, they are basically descendants of the Eothraim, who were up towards the Ravanian, just the other side of Mirkwood round here. So we know the Eothraim from 1650. They kind of migrated south and were granted lands here by the kings or stewards of Gondor. No, it'd be stewards at this point, probably, I reckon. Who knows? Okay, yeah, so the layout, the roads, the terrain is all still the same, but just to note, it's been thinned out a bit more in terms of the population centres that are there. So they're the main areas of the Gondor regions. Do have a look at my other videos where I look at Mordor and give a guide to that, and also to Umbar, giving a guide to that area around there. Not sure which area I'll take on next. I should probably move north and perhaps do Lothlorien and Mirkwood, or maybe do something around the Rovanian area, or maybe I'll just get completely bored and go somewhere completely different, like over to the Sea of Rune or up to Angmar. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, do like. It's always great to see people giving a little thumbs up to the video. Maybe leave a comment below if there are things I've missed out that you know about these areas. Do post them up. It's a great way for people who are playing to share information. And yeah, I hope it's given you a little bit of an insight into some of the areas around Gondor, some of the strategic points that crop up. And yeah, otherwise, I'll see you when I get my next video out. Until then, hope you're having a great day. Take care.